All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome and thank you everyone for choosing to spend some time with us today. The topic of discussion is around mental, social, and emotional health with COVID-19 and the shift back into reopening and normalizing. We're talking about acknowledging and coping with pandemic-induced stress. We do want to let you know that the webinar is being recorded and will be shared with the participants after. So I'd like to take some time to introduce the panel today. So my name is Sheridan Bryant, and I'm a whole health coach with Vera. And I'm partnering with my colleague, Michelle Bauer, who is one of our behavioral health clinicians. So today you'll have the opportunity to speak with us about COVID-19, how it has affected change and any challenges around the shift back. You'll hear and see the latest information and stats on the effects of this pandemic has had on our emotional and mental health. We also do want to acknowledge that there is so much more going on in our communities and the world than just COVID that are causing a lot of stress and among other feelings. So while this focus is primarily around COVID-19, please keep in mind that what we are sharing is generalized tools that can be used in many different situations. So a lot of times we think that each situation is unique and needs its own customized tool, but really the idea is to build up your toolbox so whenever a situation or event that arises and that you're facing, you feel equipped to take it on. So the idea is trial and correction, meaning trying out the tool for whatever situation you're in. If it works, great. If it doesn't, go ahead and try another one to figure out what works for you. So we will be having prompting questions throughout the presentation. We'd love to hear from you and to learn from you, but we do also know this can be a tough topic. So please feel free to participate at your own comfort. So with the impact of COVID, racial injustice, and the unrest, the fear, grief, outrage, sadness, or whatever you might be feeling through this tough time, we thought it would be nice to mix it up and start our time together with a mindfulness moment. So this is something we do at Vera before meetings and sometimes with patients to allow us to transition into the present. So I'm going to walk you through this exercise. All you need to do is be present and follow my cues. So if you are able to, please go ahead and get a comfortable position. You can gently close your eyes and begin to notice the breath. Take a couple inhales and full exhales, really feeling into that breath. There's a lot going on in the world, so allow yourself this moment to be really present with yourself. Tune into any sensations that are arising in your body. If possible, allow yourself to recognize what you're experiencing in this moment. Try not to judge or analyze. Recognizing it's just how it is. Now breathe in awareness that emotions are part of the human experience and you're not alone. Continuing to focus on that breath with every inhale and exhale. Soothing touch can bring psychological calm. If it would serve you, gently place a hand on where you might be feeling that sensation. This might be your heart. This might be your jaw. For me, it's my shoulders. Notice how it feels to breathe in and out. Consider offering yourself these words as you inhale and exhale. May I be peaceful. May I be safe and protected. May I know what I need to be well. May I be peaceful. May I be safe and protected. May I know what I need to be well. And when you're ready, take one more big inhale, fully exhale, and bring your attention back to the room. Thank you for taking this moment with me. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Michelle.
Thank you, Sheridan. This is what you can expect in today's webinar. We'll open up polls, discussion throughout this webinar, and have time for Q&A towards the end of our time today. Today we will cover how there may be the need for acceptance of a new norm and how to keep yourself and your family going during this stressful state of the world, the effects on your overall health and well-being, and addressing concerns around this topic. You'll receive tips and tools to create balance for yourself and within your environment. You'll learn about some helpful resources that are available to you to practice and share with others to better cope. To kick off our discussion, we have our first poll in our time together today. What word describes how you're feeling about the reopening and transitioning back to public spaces? While there are several things you may identify with, please choose what you feel most strongly today. We want to hear from you, how you are feeling about the state of the world and our community. Looks great. We're getting a lot of votes in. Thank you so much for sharing. See, many people are feeling pretty anxious. Take a few more moments to get in your vote. And definitely there's more than one word on this list that probably encompasses how we're feeling. Please choose the strongest one if you can. Thank you for sharing. Let's close the poll and we can share our results with you. Looks like quite a few of you are feeling anxious, about 35%, and a lot are stressed. Definitely a lot of fatigue and frustration. All right. Thank you so much again for sharing. Let's move on to our next slide. The effects of the quarantine are vast and far-reaching. Freedoms that we previously had are now off limits. Social gatherings with friends, Taco Tuesday, concerts, and other regular social engagements can't take place. We have been told to not leave the house except for essentials. Our social needs are curtailed to keep us safe. For many of us, just as social distancing restrictions are being lifted in stages, we are now facing curfews for our safety. The present and the future feels uncertain during the pandemic. This can bring up a lot of feelings of fear, isolation, and chaos. There is anxiety over what might happen today and tomorrow. Rules are made in one morning and changed by the afternoon. Our routine and structure, which lowers our anxiety, is effectively gone. Events that have been planned for weeks, months, and even years have been impacted. Families with graduating seniors are unable to traditionally celebrate this life milestone. Weddings, funerals, reunions, and vacations are canceled with no certainty of being rescheduled. People are financially affected by these losses and often unable to recover part or any of the hard-earned money they have spent for these important events. There are feelings of grief and loss related to our freedoms. We grieve over missing friends and family, the simple act of going out. The loss of planned and expected activities, our graduation, vacations, and weddings are painful. And of course, the loss of loved ones affected by COVID-19 can be devastating. Compounding this, in the recent weeks, we have been impacted by community tragedy, social injustice, and inequality that has affected everyone in the country. The quarantine affects our physical health in so many ways. We feel tired and fatigued, have headaches and stomach aches. These physical symptoms are directly connected to our emotional state. The more stressed we are, the worse we can feel physically. If we haven't experienced this connection before, it can be frightening. To feel sick in the middle of a pandemic greatly increases our stress, which affects our physical state. Current health issues can feel worse, or we can experience health issues that are actually there because of our distressed emotions. Chronic health issues can feel more severe or more frequent. Not to mention the added stress and responsibilities feel like they have a direct impact on our abilities to maintain our healthy lifestyle. COVID-19 has impacted us all in so many ways. Financially, many of us are having to evaluate new budgets due to work changes or layoffs. Small businesses are drastically struggling. For much of the world, people are transitioning to telecommuting with perhaps 3 hours notice. Not everyone is set up for this to happen in a day, much less adjusting to what working from home actually looks like. For others, adapting to telecommuting has opened up new potential in ways to work, yet is filled with technical difficulties and pets jumping into Zoom meetings. One of my cats really enjoys the Zoom meetings I have where he can show off his tail. He adores the attention he gets over Zoom, and his tail has become a fixture in anyone that has a meeting with me. What do we do with all this free time is the question for some people. Other people are wondering how they're going to balance working from home with teaching 2 elementary school children and having no childcare. We are stepping into new roles that we never anticipated and with no preparation for it. This can feel terrifying. For those of us with children, we are faced with the often confusing and challenging task of how and what to tell our children. What do we say about why their school is now online, why they can't see their friends in person, or why they can't go to the park, the mall, or the movies? We will discuss this topic in more depth a bit later during the Q&A, and also provide you with several resources that support how to talk to children about COVID and other significant events.
So just want to take this moment to let you know that we welcome any comments and questions in the chat box. I see some of you are already using it. As we just said, we will invite you throughout the webinar to participate in any of our virtual polls. Here in a moment, we'll read a few of your comments to broaden discussion, and then at the end of the presentation, we will also open it up for a Q&A and address any questions that have been asked. So the chat box, as you can see, is located at the bottom of your screen on the lower toolbar. So we will be collecting those chats as we go. You can directly chat to everyone or choose to just chat to the panelists.
The pandemic has impacted who we are as a person. It has impacted how we behave, how we feel, and what we think. We all have a mind-body connection. Our mind and our body are intrinsically linked. What happens to one ripples to the other. When we are mentally or emotionally stressed, it can show up in physical ways. Anxiety creates dental problems. Does anyone here grind their teeth? Mental distress creates headaches, stomach aches, physical tension, and muscle soreness. Emotional distress makes it hard to focus and we can feel exhausted. If we are physically distressed, we can experience increased anxiety, fears, worry, or depression. If we are physically exhausted, it can be difficult to maintain focus. Mental and physical distress can make it very hard to engage in physical activity, even when we know it can help us. Sleep problems? What hurts? Are you stressed or worried? Appetite issues? Are you in pain? Are you feeling worried or distressed? With the powerful connection that our mind and body have, it is so important to ask ourselves, is this my brain or my body when something is bothering us? For those of us with teens or small children at home, you will know that they are just as impacted on a whole person level as we are. They don't have the understanding just yet to connect the mind and the body together as we do. So it is on our shoulders to help them identify and understand how they are feeling, as well as help them through it with skills that meet them where they are at. Social distancing keeps us safe. Social distancing leaves us feeling isolated and lonely. Humans are herd creatures and we thrive on social contact. Social contact now has to be creative to keep us safe. Yet it's okay to acknowledge that video chats are not the same thing as being together. For many, our social activity and interaction is limited to who lives in our home. Do we live by ourselves, with our family, or have pets? For those of us with family, it means much more together time than we've ever had before. This is amazing and sometimes stressful. We miss friends and our usual routines and gathering together. For people living alone, this experience has been very isolating. This isolation makes it so much more important to engage in social connection via texting, video chats, or other measures. Pre-COVID life, we were successfully managing our stress, hectic lives, and routines. We were making it work even when things got hard. We were organized and managing stress without too many issues. When issues did arise, we felt capable of handling it. Maybe life wasn't perfect, but it was doable. Quarantine plus never before experienced stress levels equals anxiety, depression, substance use or misuse, OCD behaviors, and learning that our previous coping skills don't work now. We are overwhelmed. We might also feel numb. After 10 weeks of life being different, we can become desensitized to the gravity of what is happening, which can make us think we are less stressed. The stress hasn't changed. Our brain's immediate reaction has. We don't recognize the feelings of stress like we did initially, and we are less reactive to it. And the stress is still there. Now is when we work on making things manageable, finding a routine, figuring out ways to be organized for our new life, and learning ways to manage our stress. This loss of control can be very scary, frustrating, or angering for us. The realization is a significant trigger for anxiety and for depression. People can feel angry. We live in the Pacific Northwest, where the culture is independence and being able to do as we want. Now we're being told no, and that's a hard thing to take. Our ability to choose has become limited very quickly. And for lots of us, it is hard to find where we still have a choice in our life. In my own life, I can't go to restaurants like I used to, but I can choose what restaurant that I have delivered. So I'm trying something new to regain my choice. It's time to change what we've always known by pressing the reset button in our minds. It's okay to not be okay. Listen very carefully. It is okay to not be okay. We are mad, we are frustrated, we are worried, scared, irritable, crabby, grieving, and moody. How you are feeling is real and valid. It's what you do with that feeling that is most important. We need expectations in our lives. Expectations are necessary. They are useful. And old expectations don't work today. Holding ourselves to old expectations won't work. We need new expectations to match our new situation. Expectations need to be realistic and flexible. We can't judge our new situation by our old standards because it doesn't fit. At this point, I'd like to take a moment to get a few comments or questions in the chat. We only have time to grab a few here. Let's see. Definitely, parenting stressors are very big. Yes, we will have a recording of the webinar. Certainly, managing the situation with older children can be really difficult. And a lot of the time, our teenagers are working on keeping in touch with friends and family over their chats or their FaceTimes, and that can be really beneficial. Great question. Any advice for telling work you need a break? That's a wonderful question. We definitely need to communicate to our work when we're feeling overwhelmed, and working with them on how we can adjust what we're doing so that we are able to bring our best selves to work and take care of ourselves. We'd love to hear from you participating through the chat. And also know that our Vera Care teams are available as well as your employee EAP. All right, let's have the next slide. Here's a recent survey of Americans' reactions to COVID-19 done in March of this year. People are finding that they are feeling lonely, depressed, and an estimated 60% of Americans are having trouble sleeping. Over 50% of Americans surveyed are feeling anxious and tense. The good news is that people are also feeling more hopeful about their future.
So let's take some time to talk about how we respond to stress. So stress is a survival response to threats of harm. So it can be really valuable to protect ourselves, such an event of like a bear attacking you. However, if we keep on holding on to that stress and it's consistent, it can be really harmful. So lately we have felt a lot of threatening things that are going on and unpredictable things. This has been especially affected our ability to figure out the best way to tackle physical, social, mental, and emotional changes. It's important to manage chronic stress to prevent harmful long-term effects. So chronic stress can cause body aches, headaches, lowered immunity, digestive issues, trouble with sleeping, and much more. So as you can see, it really does affect your whole health. So the hope is that your brain and body will return to the state of homeostasis. So we depend on a balance of mental health and lifestyle interventions for stress reduction. So there are numerous studies that have shown that some sort of symptoms associated with stress can be improved using strategies that we're going to introduce today. So there's no typo here. Yes, we can find good in stress. But we question, like, how can good and stress be in the same sentence? So the word stress has a really negative feel, but we can actually reframe our perspective and change it into something positive, but it does take some work. So we can think of it as creating new opportunities, like creating new healthy habits. I've heard from many people that now they're cooking healthier meals at home, or they never really enjoyed cooking, but now they're using it as a way to de-stress. Or it can also make us more productive. So maybe tackling those things that you've been pushing off for a while. And taking care of our mental health benefits and fosters resilience and gives rise to confidence. So I really believe the golden nugget with stress is to build resiliency. I hate to break it to you, but stress isn't going anywhere. And if you thought it was, I am so sorry to ruin your day, but there's always going to be stress there, whether it's big stressors like that we're facing right now, personal stressors or daily stressors. But if we can build up our resiliency, we can handle and recover from it more quickly. So good stress also gives us physical benefits. So if we're noticing we're experiencing stress and remind ourselves it's our body's way to energize us, it can actually boost our performance or endorphins, whether you're getting ready for a race or if you're having to speak in front of 300 people. So stress can be good, and it can also boost our immunity. And that's something that we all really need right now.
We have a new normal, and flexibility is key. If we don't bend, we break. Because the uncertainty of the pandemic's timeline, we've been forced to create the terms of our new normal. With so many people now telecommuting and many taking on the teacher role for their children, we need to have boundaries everywhere. Limits to when we stop working, limits on social media, limits on screen time, time with family, and time to ourselves. Humans are creatures of habit. We thrive on routine and structure, which is exactly what the quarantine has changed for so many of us. This is the time to consider what a new routine can look like that meets your needs, which are going to be different than your neighbors. Creating a routine that you follow on a regular basis reduces anxiety, increases the sense of safety, and calms the mind. Remember, be flexible with your routine. This is the time where many of us are finding new interests or hobbies, or picking up old ones we haven't visited in a long time. Hiking, biking, walking, puzzles, board games, video games, art, and crafting. Those are just a few. What are yours?
So I'm really going to keep hitting on this, that we do want to find the good in stress, which at times can feel really impossible and it can take some digging to do. So we can reframe it like we talked about and see stress as an opportunity to make these changes, like starting a new exercise routine or taking actions in areas of your life that you may have not seen, faced, or confronted with before, such as questioning the norms and taking action on something even as big as social justice. Like Michelle mentioned, this is the time to create new healthy habits, however, setting boundaries. A common theme we've heard from our coaching patients is that they've actually had the time to really dive deep in some of the topics that they haven't been able to before. So they've really had the time to invest in themselves and even their relationships. So it's really important to create self-care that speaks to you. So self-care is something that you enjoy and energizes you. I like to think of it as a gift to myself that actually affects others. And because if I give myself self-care, how I show up to others, I'm much better to be around. And so like Michelle mentioned, physical can decrease your stress load. Journaling gives you time to process things and also gets it out on paper. So out of your head onto paper. Leaning into creative outlets such as art is also a good channel. Trying some self-reflection and carving out some time for yourself. Also decompressing with your tribe. Talk through your stress with those you trust the most and who support you. So let's just take a quick pause here and do some self-reflection. So take a second and think about what are you already doing for self-care, or what do you want to be doing for self-care? And you can feel free to tap if you're comfortable. Meditation, yes. Exercise.
Nature walk.
Nature walk. Gratitude. Sunbathing, yes, vitamin. Man, so if you can see this, like, yeah, there's so much going on here and it's so many good things. So if you're thinking about things you can do for yourself, definitely check out the chat and see what everybody is doing to cope and what works for them. Thank you everyone for sharing. So we need to recognize the stress and dive in. So this allows us to slow down and sort things out, explore and figuring out what is it that's pulling our attention to stress. So this is the first step to your journey towards finding and talking over strategies to cope. So finding tools that will help you build your self-efficacy, which is the belief that you can do this change, or the confidence, which is that you have all the tools you need to make this change, and the resiliency, which is the ability to bounce back from setbacks. So take a second right now to think about what is pulling you towards the bad or unwanted stress. And I'm going to encourage you to take it even a step further and ask yourself, what are the top 3 things pulling me to stress? And if you would love to share, we'd like to hear from you in the chat box as well. So while we gather some stories to share, I'll go ahead and share some of my own struggles. So I am consistently worried about my kids being isolated for too long and how that will affect them in the long term, or my teams going back into the offices, social etiquette. What will this look like in the future? Like, do we not hug each other? Do we not shake hands? This is really silly, but thanks to all the video meetings that we have, I've realized that I consistently touch my face, and I know I shouldn't be doing that. In fact, I was so frustrated by it last week, I finally put up a sticky note that says, "Girl, don't touch your face," on my computer as a visual reminder. And these are all things that I would never have thought about before COVID-19, or even just the current stress. My partner, he decided that he wanted to start the microwave during this presentation. So the stress is constantly happening all around us. So let's see what everybody's talking about. Oh, yeah, going to places. Worried about elderly parents. Yes, I live far away.
What school will look like
Needing
in the
your
fall?
own. Loss of my theater and dance community, yes. Ugh, not hugging your kid when she was recently sick. Oh, I'm sure that was so hard.
The uncertainty of everything.
So sorry. I'm so sorry to hear about your son. Yeah. This is really, really tough stuff. I don't know about you all, but I have goosebumps reading all this.
Putting a child on a plane, yeah. Definitely feels like there's no escape from the news.
Yeah, as you can see, there's a lot going on, and we really appreciate you all sharing.
This is the time when we need support. Get support for yourself. Reach out. There are online support communities everywhere. While being thoughtful on social media, you can find so many Facebook groups that can meet your needs. National organizations have also created virtual groups or hangouts that are available. Check out your app store. There are numerous apps to help with stress management, anxiety, and depression that are free and actually work. I have several patients that have made these apps a part of their daily routine, and they're feeling a lot better because of it. Apps such as Calm, Insight Timer, DBT Coach, and Mood Path can be very beneficial. I don't sleep anymore without Insight Timer after just a few weeks of using it. It makes such a difference in my ability to relax and shut my brain off from the day. Reach out to your friends via text, video chat, or whatever works for you. The point is to reach out. They and you will be so glad that you did. People are organizing video chats and virtual dinners with each other and trying out appropriately social distance front yard hangouts. And professional help. Contact your primary care provider or look into your employee EAP.
So remember, it's not easy to ask for help. As Mr. Rogers so simply puts it, in time of crisis, look for the helpers and you won't be scared. Like Michelle just mentioned, it's so important to have support and reach out. Share your feelings. One of my colleagues likes to say you can bury your feelings, but you are burying them alive and they will come up one way or another. And for me, that usually comes up with the ones I love the most, and that really does not feel good. So have somebody you can talk to and be open to professional help. So this is something that we're super passionate at Vera and do, but there's also other community resources. Imagine how much our world would benefit if we all could create forward momentum. As humans, we love control and power. So go ahead and take it back. Call it by name and envision what it would look like if you kicked it to the curb. So creating a mantra to put a positive spin on whatever stressors are presenting themselves. I have a friend who recently shared with me like how difficult it's been to be in leadership during the pandemic and all the things that are happening in our world. And through coaching, she actually developed her own mantra, which was be present, be helpful, be kind, to really ground her and remind her how she wants to show up with her employees, especially in stressful moments. A mantra can be used to anchor you to help you move through it and away from the stress and into a place of action. If we could change the self-talk and say it enough, we can start to believe it and turn it into a positive place. So as a health coach, talking about goals and creating a plan is definitely my jam. It's something that really excites me. So a helpful tool that you might have already been using or one that you might know of that coaches use, and there's a lot of research behind, is SMART goals. So making sure your goals are intentional, are specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and timelined. The more you can see it, the more likely you are to do it. And figuring out what's in your control to make changes around and what's not. You can't change your partner, right? But you can change how you react to things. So letting go of what you can't take action on or you don't own, and taking action with the things you can move forward with. It's really able to start small. The bigger the intention or the goal, the more as humans we avoid it or put it off for tomorrow. So for example, let's tackle something really present and heavy, racial equality. While it's beautiful and important intention to make it happen, that's a really big one and can really feel daunting. So if you take a step back from that and ask yourself, what is the first step to start this process? You can come up with some ideas like educating yourself, learning about community resources, donating, and discovering ways to get involved. That seems a little bit more doable. So starting with small, bite-sized, doable pieces is key to building momentum towards action, because not acting or moving on will heighten our stress and emotion and bring out our friend procrastination and shame if we don't actually do it. And that puts us more backwards, takes us backwards. Make sure that the steps you start on are small enough to have complete confidence in your success. Even a small step is a step forward, and that's the only way we can meet our goal, is by doing something. A lot of times we want to accomplish it yesterday, but we really need to learn through the process. Also, tracking is an easy tool to keep you moving forward and a way to keep each goal SMART.
All right, here's another poll. Thinking about what was just presented, we are wondering which tool that you are most drawn to and thinking about trying out. So let's take our poll on that. If you've tried something that we didn't list that you had success with, please add it into the chat box so that others can be in the know. We're getting a lot of great feedback so far. I love seeing mindfulness being so popular. Thank you everyone for participating in this. Learning a new language. I like that as something to try out. Okay, upping our video calls with our friends and the family. Learning guitar. Okay, we'll take a few more moments for our poll. Thank you so much all for participating. Okay, let's close our poll and look at our results. So mindfulness is definitely the one on a lot of people's list, 33%. Video calls with friends and family, SMART goals, and looking at some professional help. That's wonderful. And video calls. Developing a plan of action. Thank you so much for that participation in our poll. Let's move on to our next slide.
So let's take a moment here to write down an actionable step that you could possibly do today, something that's relevant for you. And here's an example of mine. So I have the desired outcome of being active, taking a break, and connecting with my 94-year-old grandma who's been in isolation for over 2 months. So my SMART goal is on Thursday, I will go on a 30-minute walk during my lunch and call my grandma. Michelle, do you have any SMART goals you would like to share?
I do. I do not spend enough time with my horses, so my goal revolves completely around that of putting my boots and my riding pants by the front door 3 nights a week. And I am a fan of calendar tracking. It really works. So I track it on the calendar every single time I made it to the barn.
I'm sure they enjoy that. So we left my favorite tool for last, and it's something that we really value at Vera. And someone even says it's our secret sauce. So we dabbled in it at the beginning of the presentation, but wanted to spend some time talking about mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? There is many different ways to view mindfulness. So one way is a human trait or capacity. This is a trait that is present in all of us, the basic human ability to be awake and aware of what we're doing when we're doing it, the ability to be cultivated through practice. Another one is a practice, which is an intentional and regular act, which familiarizes us about qualities of mindfulness and develops our capacity to be mindfulness. So this might look like a formal meditation, a mindfulness pause, a mindfulness moment like we did at the beginning, or informally remembering to be mindful throughout the day. So, you know, maybe every time you hear your phone ring, you pause and be mindful so that you can look for different cues to remind you to do that. So there's also a toolbox which is basically a bunch of different practices that you have in your toolbox to pull out. So the word mindfulness is sometimes used to refer to a range of different practices, including attention training, cultivating of qualities of the heart, and even forms of visualization. There's also inquire practices that examine specific mechanisms of the mind that create ways of seeing the world that eases pattern or distress in long term. So for the purpose of today, we're just going to explore mindfulness as a tool. So being present in the moment and in a non-judgmental way with ourselves. So practicing mindfulness can help us increase our ability to regulate emotions, decrease stress, anxiety, and depression. It can also help us focus our attention and observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment. This allows us to be in the moment without any distraction of the past or the anticipation of what's to come. So this helps us ground ourselves. This also allows us freedom to respond to our feelings and to remove anxiety in our current state. So it can actually help us prevent the reactions that we don't want to have. So I know for me, there's many times in my life that I would have been like, oh, if I would have took a breath, I probably wouldn't have done that. And then I feel guilty about my reactions. So really practicing just taking that moment before responding is a type of mindfulness. Just keeping in mind, we can't control the past. It's already done. The only way we can control the future is actually through presence.
So to sum up everything we've really talked about today, we shared and talked about tools that are proven helpful in facing stress head on, whether your stress is in this moment, with the state of things right now, or long term. Try them out. They may be helpful for you to use in confronting the stress and stressors you face every day, or when things are feeling out of your control. These tools can allow one to take control back and get back some semblance of normal. Please keep in mind, mindfulness looks different for everyone. It's a personal experience, and asking yourself how you can be mindful in your life or create a mindfulness practice for yourself. Everyone needs support right now. The quarantine has stripped us of many positive and healthy skills we used. Without our usual skills, it is easy to go back to old habits or patterns that we have broken or fall into less healthy new habits. Negative thinking can be hard to break when we get started, and it is important to check that we are getting our influence or contact with positive thoughts if you're struggling with negative thoughts or feelings. It may be confusing as to how you go about setting up a new routine or structure for yourself after your normal routine is gone. Taking time to identify which parts of your old structure can be pulled forward and recognizing how you can control your new structure helps create a new framework. There are so many resources available. Apps including Calm, Insight Timer, DBT Coach, MoodPath, Sandelo, and many others are free on the App Store.
it's really vital to know that there's support and assistance out there, and a place to help you navigate with this pandemic among other stressors going on. At our care centers, we offer primary care, and we also offer health coaching and connect you with additional resources such as behavioral health and employee EAP. So our number one priority at Vera is to serve our patients, to support them, and make sure we are all safe and healthy for them. So at this time, I'd like to invite you all to chat in your questions or concerns regarding this topic today. I know a lot of people have already chatted in a bunch, so we'll go ahead and gather some of those. We are so excited to see all the questions that were sent to us prior to the webinar. So we were able to answer some of them throughout our conversation today, but we wanted to take a few minutes to talk about some more specific questions. There is going to be a link that will be shared to the participants after the webinar that will have the slides and the Q&A. So there were tons of questions, so we're not able to answer them all during this time, but we'll make sure that we get that to you so you can see our responses and our resources. So after we go over the ones that were already sent to us, we'll open it up for questions from the chat box. This is a big question. So how can we help others experience isolation, stress, and grief? This is a really tough one. As we talked about before, it's really hard to ask for help and sometimes even more difficult to receive it. When somebody sees us in pain, sometimes that can bring us to think that we're perceived as weak or that we're putting burdens on others. So a couple of things to keep in mind is to hold them in unconditional positive regard. So what this really means is just remembering that they are doing the best they can with the tools they have in this situation. This allows us to reduce our judgment of their experience. And then also listen first. As humans, we are fixers. We don't like to see people in pain. It's super uncomfortable. But by trying to fix somebody unless they ask us for advice, it really comes off as us saying they're broken and that we have all their answers. But we really might not fully understand their experience. Also being curious, ask questions to really understand what they're going through and asking them if there's anything you can do. And a couple other things I was thinking is like really be kind. Just as long as you're kind, people will appreciate it. And remember, it's okay not to have the answers. So even by even saying that to that person, even saying that I'm not really sure what to say right now, or I'm not really sure what to do, but I want to listen to you and I want to hear from you. There will be a lot of value in that. So even if they're not ready now, they might come back later and be more open to your support. The other question is, how can I stop making mountains out of molehills? Yeah, it's really easy to do that. So asking yourself, so I like to do some perspective practices here. So asking yourself, does this matter tomorrow? Will this matter next week? What about a month or a year from now? Regularly checking in with yourself to see if it's really that important to have that energy towards. We do have mountains that we are facing right now, so if we can manage those molehills, that will be really beneficial. Another question that we had here is, do you have any techniques to stop ruminating or being stuck in deep thought? As I shared, I have a lot of the ruminating going on sometimes with my current frustrations, but really just acknowledging when it's happening is really key. Realizing when you are spinning, putting it into perspective, what is the worst case scenario and how likely is it that's going to happen? We talked a lot about mindfulness, so stop, breathe, observe to be in the present moment, repeat a comforting phrase. So I tend to ruminate at night before bed, and so I listen to Calm every single night, but sometimes it doesn't always work. And so I actually have adapted the phrase, let it be, from the Beatles song, and I just sing it over and over again. And it's amazing that like 9 out of 10 times it really does help me calm my mind. Another practice is gratitude, thinking of the things that you're grateful for, rewriting that narrative so you can soften the story and remove the power. All right, Michelle, do you want to take the next one?
Yes, this is a great question. Is how can I talk to my children about COVID? You know, it's so important to understand where your children are at already. Be curious. Ask them what they already know and answer questions that they might have. It's so important to follow their lead on how much they want to talk about it or how much they don't. Providing comfort and honesty. Really, it's so important right now as parents that we pay attention to our tone and how we are reacting. The more that we are upset and distressed, our children really tune into that. And it is okay to not have the answers. It's okay to tell our children that we don't know. We don't want to sugarcoat things, and we also want them to be able to express their fears without giving them more than they need to know. Giving children the opportunity to feel in control is so important right now. Focusing on what you know are things that you can control also helps keep them safe. Keeping our children active, helping them eat well, helping them sleep well, and then practicing just necessary safety and hygiene. Giving our children options, it helps them regain control as well. Keep talking to our children. Don't be afraid to check in with them, especially those of us that have teenagers. They are the heart and soul of one-word answers and often shutting down. Check in with them. They might not necessarily come up to you to say how they're doing, but you can certainly ask them how they're doing. One of the best things that a person can do to get their teen talking is go for a drive. Get a drive-through, drink, or ice cream from McDonald's. Teenagers are more likely to talk when they don't have to make eye contact. And when you're driving a car, they don't have to look at you in the face.
That's good advice. So we collected a bunch of additional resources. So this is just an example. We have a bunch more that we'll also share with you. And we also have about like 5 more PowerPoints of questions and resources. So while we won't be going over all that during this time, we do encourage you to take a look at them if you have more questions and want to know more resources that are out there. But at this time, we really want to take the time to answer any questions that anybody on this call has for us.
Okay, one question we have. I have a lot of fears about my workplace opening up so quickly. How can I talk to my supervisor about my concerns? That's a great question. Lots of people are looking at going back to work. And one thing to ask your supervisor is, what are the safety protocols as far as social distancing, personal hygiene practices, and contact with the customers that you serve in your line of work? Many businesses and employers are finding a really great healthy balance of keeping people safe and still being able to run their business. Here's another great question. How do you handle stress and keeping you and your spouse mentally healthy during this time? This is a time of so much togetherness that it can be really uncomfortable. It is so important to have time to yourself as much as time together. For a lot of people, moving to telecommuting has taken away that commute to work, which was oftentimes that private time to yourself, or those hobbies of cruising through TJ Maxx and smelling all the candles is not really a thing that I can do anymore. So encouraging your significant other to go take some time for themselves, and also supporting yourself in doing that. You don't have to be productive during that time. It's just doing something that you enjoy or that brings you calm or peace.
Here's a good question. Having to be on the front line essential worker through the entire pandemic, how do you suggest I deal with frustration I have with coworkers who've been lucky enough to stay home and still get paid, who cannot relate to my real world stress? Yeah, that's a tough one. It's really difficult when you are when you're on the front line and others have the privilege of not being there. A couple of the tips that we've shared with today is just really letting it out and naming what those frustrations are, and talking with your supervisors around it as well. And I hear that that is a really big stressor. And sometimes when people aren't in that situation, they're not really sure, they don't really understand your stress. So even being comfortable enough to share that with your coworkers about how stressful this is and what you're going through. Michelle, do you have anything to add or anything more?
Oh, yes. A great way to cope with those feelings of frustrations is journaling. I suggest to many of the people that I work with of really writing those frustrations out in a journal so that they're not sitting inside. Some people definitely, we've been on the front lines the whole time, and that's a difficult thing. And for those who have not, it is a different experience, and being able to still honor everyone's experience as it comes. Here's another great question. How to minimize mental fatigue by the end of the week? Oh, this is where self-care comes in. It's so important to be, giving yourself permission to care for yourself, getting sleep at night, limiting some screen time. We are exposed to screens all day, every day. So if you can take breaks throughout the day to not be looking at a screen, limit your time on your phone, on social media, and exposing yourself to the news, and really doing things for yourself that fill up that internal bucket and are energizing for you.
Here's a question about what if your spouse is ready to go to work and back to normal, but you're not? It's really hard not to be on the same page with your partner. And to be honest, sometimes you're not going to be on the same page. We all think differently. We all have different needs, but really having that conversation and addressing what your fears are and working together to decide what is best for you each as individuals and as a couple as well, but opening that communication and being curious of why they want to go back and why you don't, and looking for some common ground.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a great point. These are tips and tricks and ideas and tools, but we're just in a hard spot right now, and a lot of the stresses are systematic in nature, and not downplaying that at all, and just looking for ways to support yourself through it as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great suggestion of doing a 5-minute journal every morning and night. It's really been beneficial. That is a great thing to do. It helps you set perspective on your day, and it helps you debrief and decompress in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's take one more question, and just as a reminder, you will be receiving a link to the slides and this recording tomorrow, so you are definitely able to review anything in more detail or that you might have missed. Okay. Any further questions? Well, how do we realistically take breaks working from home? That is such a great question. That's where that routine and structure is so important in work from home. And it's really easy to forget that. And unconsciously, because we are at home, I think we have a tendency to look at, oh, I should be doing laundry or cleaning this while I'm working at the same time. And reminding yourself that you're working from home. So getting outside for 5 or 10 minutes.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, thank you everyone so much for participating. I loved all your guys' feedback and comments and thoughtful responses. We would love to hear from you. So if you have any more follow-up questions or ideas, feel free to email them to us. We are so grateful that you decided to spend this time with us today. And we've learned a lot from you as well. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and this will be sent out to you tomorrow. I hope everyone takes care and stay healthy and safe.
Yes. Have a blessed day.